Hey, what's up, guys? Today's video is going to be all about connectivity and how we get, everything to talk to each other, and to kind of clear up a bit of confusion. So when you start getting into computer music, they say get a MIDI device or a MIDI keyboard, and people they look up MIDI and they come across this 5-pin circular thing, right? And this is a MIDI cable, and this standard was introduced in the 80s, and it was a way for basically, different pieces of gear and different kind of sequencers to talk to each other. And MIDI is pretty good. MIDI is, it's pretty good for basically everything. And the standard is stuck around. Even push and machine, they both send data over USB, but it's still MIDI. They send it, and it still, works really well. So when you look up MIDI, you get the circular thing, but how you connect to your device is through USB. So I have this thing right down here. This is the first MIDI device I bought. It's a UC33. It's pretty cool, and it has the Ableton thing on it, and it's pretty awesome. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go through it. So you have, your knobs and stuff like that. Each of these is its own think of it as its own kind of entity in the MIDI space, and it goes from 0 to 127, right? So completely, down like this would be 0, and then you go up all the way through 127. Same with a knob all the way from the left, 0, all the way to the right is 127. And that's all well and good. So MIDI is think of MIDI, I'm making it simple, but MIDI is a value between 0 and 127 and on-off, right? And it's pretty good. So think of it as a keyboard. So the key or keys that I press would be a value of on or off, and then it looks at how hard you pressed it, or velocity, and the velocity would be between 0 and 127. So kind of soft would be 30, and pounding on it would be 127, assuming you have a velocity sensitive keyboard. And how everything kind of connects modernly is still MIDI. It's still the same standard, but we don't use MIDI cables. We use USB cables. So this is a typical USB cable that you'll come across. Everything on my desk pretty much communicates to that. We've all seen a USB. That's the male end, giggity. And what the hell am I doing? And this is the end that plugs into your device, right? Everything here plugs in like that. And using a USB cable is it has a lot of advantages. It still carries the MIDI data, but USB has an advantage of it carries power. So we look at the back here. We plug it in through USB, and this is it. Drivers take over, and then Ableton can talk to it, and it sends MIDI data throughout Windows, and it has like plug and play, and it's fully supported, and it goes over USB, and basically every computer on the planet Earth has USB or some sort of USB, right? So when they say get a MIDI controller, they say just get something that can send MIDI over USB. But modern MIDI controllers have a USB in or out, USB in out, right? It's powered, so you don't need to plug in the AC. It'll light up, and it's all good. Machine and push are examples, and you have that. But then they have the 5-pin USB things right here, in and out. So what does that mean? So it'll still act. The main part will act as a MIDI device, but then within your Ableton settings through your MIDI page, you can set to use or send MIDI in and out through this device. So think of it as like an external device. So why would you want that? Well, my JP8080 or my Nord also, they don't have USB. So how would I send data from the Ableton to my Nord here? So what I do is I'd have USB into this, and then I'd have a MIDI cable, this thing, completely other cable, but same format, coming out through MIDI out right here, right? So that's MIDI out, and that would go to my Nord, and everything can talk to each other. So it was invented about 30 years ago. I forget which company did it. Dave Smith, maybe. Don't quote me on that. And it was a way for everything to talk to each other. So how do you make a Prophet 8 and an Atari sequencer talk to a JP8080 or talk to a DX7? All through MIDI, all through that cable. And it's basically, think of it as the same. So, if you pick up an old piece of gear, it all has like MIDI and stuff like that. So basically, here's my sound card. I'll just get this just because I'm on a roll. This is a Motu, right? Rest in peace. It has quite a bit of connectivity, but you can't see it here, but it has MIDI in and out, right? So you'd have the MIDI going out to your gear via the cable. Then you'd have the audio plugs going into, one of these guys. And then you'd have it all connected and it all works well. So, yeah, there's that. And USB has, again, become the de facto standard. But, you might come across something else. I forget how many years ago, but recent memory, everyone started using Firewire. So what is Firewire? It is this thing. This is a male-to-male ended type thing, right? And it looks like USB, but it's not USB. It looks different. So why did the audio industry briefly, get hard over Firewire? Well, because it was a constant data stream. And what that means is USB, in case we forgot what a USB cable looked like. USB, it sends data through packets, right? So it'll take like a chunk of information and then send it over. A chunk of information and send it over. Firewire is just a constant data stream like audio, right? And that's basically how it would do it. And it was, people saw it as being very stable. And then USB 2 and 3 came out. And that changed the game. And now, everyone's abandoning it. But the film industry still uses this for obvious reasons, right? So the power of all your connectivity you're going to be dealing with is not as confusing as it sounds. You'll be dealing with... Get out of there. You'll be dealing with a plug like this. This is a 1/4 inch. And you'll be dealing with that. And then you'll also be dealing with... get over here. An 1/8 inch, which is basically your headphone. This might pop. Sorry. You'll be dealing with that. You'll be dealing with USB. You probably might not be dealing with Firewire at all. And then you'll be dealing with conventional MIDI cable. So when they say get a MIDI thing or a MIDI interface or a MIDI keyboard, it basically just means something that's USB that, sends MIDI data over USB into your computer, because your computer won't have MIDI ins. But if you have a good MIDI device, like this guy, with MIDI in out, you're all good. So that way you can kind of expand, and a lot of things have this. And there's also converters that will directly convert USB to MIDI, and they're about the size of your index finger, and that all works well. And yeah, that's it. All right. Hope that clears some stuff out, and enjoy.